Hello and welcome to the Vermont Department of Corrections Connections podcast. This is our first ever. I'm here with James Gillis. He is the Special Teams Operations Coordinator. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, we'll get into it. So today we're talking about crisis intervention. And why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of who you are and how you've come through the Department of Corrections.
So my name is James Gillis, like you said. I started about a little over 11 years ago with the department. I started as a TCO, which is a temporary corrections officer. As in uniform, I was on the SRT team for Northwest, which is our tactical team. And then I promoted into a CSS position, which is Correctional Services Specialist. Through that promotion, I had to step down from the SRT team. That was the rule at the time. If you were out of uniform, you couldn't stay on the team. So then I applied for crisis intervention and made it through the basic and got on that team. A little while later, I got on peer support, promoted to CSS2, and then I think it was 3 years, I went to OPSC as a training coordinator for facility trainings and casework trainings. And then about a year and a half into that, my current position opened up for me, which was Special Teams Operations Coordinator. I applied for that and got that position, and now I've been in that role for about 2 years.
Okay.
So in that role, I oversee the department's special teams, SRT, CI, which is hostage negotiating, peer support, and honor guard.
Okay. And this position, where does this fit within the department?
So it's technically under OPSC, which is the Office of Professional Standards and Compliance. But my direct supervisor is Nick Fortier, but it's kind of unique in how some of the orders for work that needs to be done come down. Typically they come from Nick if it's like a project or a training that needs to happen or an update or something like that. But at other times I might get a call from the facilities director saying, hey, we need to activate teams to this location, or asking for information, or just giving me a heads up that something might be going on. Or I might get something from Al Cormier or somebody else like that. So depending on what's going on and the need, depends on where my orders for work come from, okay. Which is interesting.
Yeah, you're definitely you have your direct chain of command, obviously, like with everybody else, but you get kind of this influence from other locations depending on needs and stuff like that, and it can definitely change the goal of the day or whatever that looks like. Yeah, there's a couple of positions within the department where that's a thing, so I definitely think that's interesting, and if you're not used to that kind of path of communication, how it changes things for you, then it can be a little bit stressful to understand or hard to understand, especially when you're used to that direct supervision line. It
breaks your day up though when you get those outside calls in for activations or something. It kind of takes you out of your current workflow.
Oh, for sure.
It's nice because it breaks up your time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So as we talk about crisis intervention today, why don't we start with what exactly is crisis intervention?
So crisis intervention's the department's hostage negotiation team. So they'll handle all negotiations in any hostage incident, which a lot of people would think is just I take you and I hold you hostage and I have demands. But hostage incidents could also be maybe I'm using the unit as hostage. Maybe me and a group of other friends took over a living unit, and we're not willing to concede on anything. And for some reason, one reason or another, tactical does not have the current ability or the avenue to get in there right now. So we'd use negotiators in that situation as well. Or maybe I'm taking myself hostage. So it could be a wide variety of things, but basically any time a negotiation needs to happen to resolve an incident, that's the team that's going to be called.
Okay, so it's is it more in lieu of a tactical response, or can it be to give the tactical response time to prepare, or?
It's almost it's never, well, not never. It's rare that it's in lieu of.
Okay.
So that has happened. If we have somebody who might be suicidal and is threatening suicide, and they have a weapon that they're holding to themselves, or they're threatening to jump off of something with like a sheet tied around their neck or something else like that.
Okay.
We don't necessarily need tactical for that, although we will have officers ready to intervene if needed. But usually those can be resolved with just purely negotiation. But obviously, maybe not obviously, but if it's an actual hostage incident, like I have you hostage in our cell, or I take over the unit with a group of other IIs, we're going to have tactical there. It's going to be a joint response from both, and they're going to work hand in hand.
Sure, that makes sense. Better to be prepared for everything.
Yeah.
Rather than just be like, they got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. How big is the current team?
Right now, there is 17 members on the team currently, in 3 regions.
Okay. Regions, what are the regions?
So the regions, it's a statewide team, so they're all on one team, and they all report to one team leader. But it's broken up for response purposes into 3 different regions. So you have the Northeast region, which is St. Jay and Newport, the Northwest region, which is Northwest and Chittenden, and then you have the Southern region, which is Marble Valley and Springfield.
Okay. Is there a perfect number for the team, or like
As a whole?
Yeah.
No. I mean, 25 is a pretty full house for that team.
Yeah.
Part of the reason is the trainings they do, and I'm not sure if we get into that later, I can go in more depth, but the way that they train is very intense.
Yeah.
And it's scenario-based heavily. It's hard to get everyone working in a realistic way if you have 25 people, because there's only so many
sure.
positions in an
Yep.
incident. So that's like, there's no cap by policy, but that's about as big as it could really,
Right.
as it really needs to be.
Yeah.
Regionally, there's once again not a perfect number, but there is like, if you only have 2 people for the southern region, that's kind of a problem.
Yeah.
Because
Based on facility size and the populations that those particular sites supervise, probably, right?
yeah, that, and now if you have an incident down there, you're waiting multiple hours, 1.5 to 2 hours for people to get from the Northwest region or the Northeast region down to Springfield. So if you can, and it doesn't always work out that way, but if you can, it's best to have a pretty even spread between the 3.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Okay. I guess when you don't think about it, you don't know, right? Okay. How often do you typically see like a recruitment cycle? Like how often are you putting out like, hey, come join the team?
It's on an as needed basis. So when I got on, it was about 5 years before they recruited again. So
wow.
Yeah. So if the team has decent numbers, because the basic is quite a thing to run. It's not a small task, and it takes a lot of manpower as far as working hours from staff and getting them off shift for 2 weeks for some of them,
Okay.
booking hotels. So if we don't have like a big need at the time or a need for more people, then we'll keep what we have, and we won't recruit. We don't recruit on like a regular basis. But we did just do a basic last year, and we're going to be running another basic in October of this year. The team's pretty good size right now at 17, like I said, but we could use a few more.
Sure.
Notably in the Northwest region would be nice. We recruit statewide, though. We don't base recruitment on that at all.
Yep.
So when people interview, it doesn't affect their process.
Sure.
If everybody who interviews is from the southern region, then we get people from the southern region. It just is what it is.
Right.
But
That, and it's not like they live necessarily so close to that. You can kind of
Right.
live on the kind of the cusp of a region, so to speak, anyway. Like if you worked in Marble Valley, you could actually live kind of in between Rutland and Burlington,
Yeah.
which would be kind of dual purpose for call outs and stuff like that. So that makes sense. So for those that are interested, what does that look like as far as like applying for the team or kind of seeking that out and going through the process to try and join? So
there'll be an email that goes out department wide. This year it'll come from. Last year it came from me. This year it'll come from Jody Safford or Karen Holmes, and it'll give them all the instructions on. You fill out this form, submit it to this person, get it signed by these people, and by this date. And that's how they start the process. From there, the team leadership will conduct interviews with those people, and then based on scores, they'll invite people from that interview pool to attend the basic.
Okay.
Minimum score was for last year and should be continuing into this year was 60. But that being said, it's a competitive process. So if we get, let's say we want to invite 20 as a cap to the basic, if 40 people apply,
Yeah.
you could score a 70. But if you're in the bottom, if you're 21 with a 70, then
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, they can kind of move the marker
Yeah.
based on the numbers. So, yeah, if everybody scored above the minimum, and you had you only wanted 10 there, then and 10 people got 90 plus or whatever, then you could just single it out to those 10 people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
The interview's interesting. It's not a normal state interview. There are some normal state interview style questions, like have
Okay.
you ever been part, I'm not spilling secrets here. Anybody who's interviewed with the
Yeah.
department knows, have you been a part of a team? Have you done
Sure.
this? Those kind of questions.
Yeah.
But there's other pieces that I can't talk about on the podcast because we'd kind of give it away
Yeah.
to people, but that test specifically two of the skill sets that are really hard to teach
Okay.
that we want to see, you don't have to be a superstar at them, but do you at least have a predisposition to do these things naturally a little bit?
Yeah.
And so we test for those two areas. I can say what the areas are. So one is, I just can't say how we test it, but one of them is active listening, which is really important for the position. And then the other one is just communication. Can you communicate with
Right.
another human
Right.
effectively?
Which is kind of a important baseline to have when you're going to be joining a team like crisis intervention. If
Yeah,
you're,
absolutely.
Yeah, if you're not a patient person or don't really pay attention when somebody's talking, you're probably not going to be well suited for this dealing with a potentially dangerous situation.
Yeah, and we can improve your skill set on that. Obviously, you don't have to come in already a or we wouldn't even have a basic if
Yeah,
that was
right.
the case.
Right.
But there should be at least a base level, and that's what we're looking for. If that base level doesn't exist, then it's going to be harder.
Sure.
Because the next step is going to be the basic, which is a unique training in the department in that it's both a training and a selection. So it's got anywhere from, it varies class to class. Last year it was a 40% attrition rate from that training,
Okay.
which means 40% of the people who came in on day one were no longer here on day 10 for graduation.
Okay.
But it ranges from anywhere from 40 to 60 on average, depending on the class.
For attrition?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So part of that is that we have 10 days to make sure someone is ready to be on a door negotiating on day 11. Because when let's say for SRT, which is our tactical team, there's no SRT tactics for that SRT is going to be called out for. Obviously on shift, you're by yourself in units. But
Yep.
if you're being activated as SRT, it would be extremely rare that you would be by yourself and activated as SRT. Maybe
Right.
you're posted for extra security, that'd be the only situation. But
Sure.
if we're doing a unit take back and you're the newest member of the team, you're going to be with other people who
Mhm.
can back you up, support you, walk you through what you need to be doing. And if something starts going wrong, can get you out or keep you safe.
Sure.
With CI, and it's kind of a curse of, I'm going to knock, but it's on wood, but we call it the basic curse. It seems like every time we have a basic, something happens within like the next week or two after that. And it happened this time. It wasn't a full call out, but we did have an incident that ended up using CI the week after graduation. And the other piece of that is it's almost always somebody who just graduated, and this year it was the same thing again.
That's the luck, right? Okay.
But if we call them out, there's a pretty high likelihood that you are by yourself at that door for a period of time if you're the closest responder or you're on shift at that facility at the time.
Yep.
And when you graduate, you have to be ready to do that.
Okay.
So we can't get people up to speed later. We can't rely on the fact that, well, we're going to have trainings later, because you graduate on Friday. I could be calling you 2 a.m. on a Saturday, that Saturday, saying, hey, you need to be here, and you have to be ready to actually negotiate possibly for someone's life and safety.
Sure. So it's not really like a step up type of training style where you go to the basic, you get to learn the basic skills or whatever, and then follow up training gets you where you need to be efficient.
Yeah.
You're expected to walk out the door, day 10,
ready to go.
Just in the role.
And we'll refine you. We'll help. The team continues to train and refines those skills over time. Like Jody, who's the team leader right now, she's phenomenal.
Yep.
I'm sure she would say, I don't want to speak for her, I'll speak for myself. When I graduated the basic, I was good enough to graduate the basic.
Yeah.
But I'm positive that I got better, even better over time with continuing training. So it's not that you're as good as you're ever going to be at day 10.
Okay.
But you need to be at a level where if my life is on the line, I would trust you on the other side of that door.
Okay.
And that's what that's the criteria at the end of the basic in a nutshell.
What does, if you can even get into it, so like at the end of that day 10, like, is there like, I don't want to say a test out because that implies like, okay, sit down in front of a piece of paper and fill in the blank or circle true or false or whatever it is. But is there kind of like a test period at the end of the training where everybody kind of gets to have an experience where everybody in the team leadership or whatever gets to say they're ready?
It's throughout. Yeah, so day one is not, they're always being tested because 10 days is not a lot of time to figure out if somebody's going to be cut out right now for the basic. So they're tested from day one, but the real tests happen a little bit later in week one and then all throughout week 2. And those are scenario-based, where one of the senior team members is playing the role of a hostage taker. They have, it's kind of interesting, they have like a character profile. The senior member receives like a character profile. Hey, this is who you are. This is your life history. This is what you've been through. This is what's going on today. This is maybe your mental health conditions or your medications or what's going on in your family or whatever.
Yeah.
And they get this whole sheet, and then they play the role of that person. And they get, if you've never seen it, and I'm not just blowing smoke, it's super impressive. Like some of these members could be Hollywood actors. Like you really think you're in it when you're on the other side of it.
I got to participate in that a long, long time ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a really unique experience.
Yeah, it's interesting, but to say the least. But it's so those start towards the end of week 1, but we'll toss them kind of like mini ones, even on day 1, where they're doing practice on just introducing themselves or talking. And really what we're looking for throughout the whole 2 weeks, but even on day 1, is if you do something and I give you feedback and I say, hey, next time do this.
Yeah.
Next time you don't do it. You don't make the adjustment.
Yeah.
I give you the feedback again. Maybe you argue a little bit. It starts to become, what we're looking for is the ability to take and utilize feedback in real time.
Sure.
Because we have 10 days to give you feedback and for you to use it.
Yeah.
And if in the first week you're fighting us on feedback we're giving, then it's going to be a hard 10 days to try to get you to accept it.
Sure.
So that's kind of what we're looking at in the beginning. And then teamwork is huge. A lot of people see the negotiator at the door or on the phone, and they think it's that person. but there's a whole team behind that negotiator. And if they weren't there, that negotiator's job is insanely difficult.
Right.
So there's all these other roles. There's intel, who's gathering intelligence on the person inside the room or inside the unit that we're talking to. There's and on the whole incident. And then there's a recorder who's writing things down for everyone on the team to be able to look at quick and reference on what's going on. We have a runner who's, it's what it sounds like, they're literally running from, if we're at a door, they're running from that door to the knock, which is where the team is, to the command post, which is where the incident commander is, back and forth between those three locations, delivering notes or objectives or requests from the person inside the room.
Yeah.
And then there's the team leader who's overseeing the knock, and it's not necessarily Jody.
Yeah.
So Jody's the team leader of the whole team, but in an incident, there's another team leader, and it's not always the actual leader.
Right.
And then there's the secondary who supports the primary. The primary is the one who's talking.
Yeah.
The secondary is there in a support role for the primary, both to give them encouragement, check in on them, make sure that they're good, that they don't need water, a break, go to the bathroom, and then also to deal with anybody who's coming in so that nobody distracts that primary. So
Right.
if you're a runner and you're coming up and you think you have super important information for the primary and I'm the secondary, you have to give that to me first. I'm not letting you anywhere near the primary, and I will review it, and then I will give it to them
Sure.
when it looks like the right time.
Yeah.
Because the primary needs to be locked in on that conversation. So those are the roles. So we're looking for teamwork in that hub of roles, and we're also looking for, the other thing is, day 10, it's not just about the negotiating. That is the most important part, but in theory, but we need everyone who graduates to be solid in each role. Because depending on when you get to an incident, when you're called out, you could have graduated last week, but you're team leader.
Right.
Because Jody, who's the actual team leader, was there first, so she's on the door.
Yeah.
Karen got there second, who's assistant team leader, she's secondary.
Yep.
And now you're the team lead in the knock, getting things set up because you showed up third. Or however that order works out, depending on the incident.
Situationally dependent, I'm sure.
Yeah, so everybody needs to leave there proficient in all those roles, and they need to work together. So if we see people who don't work well as a team, maybe they're too much of a controlling person, they want to control everything regardless of their role, or they are argumentative with their team members, they just don't work well in a team environment, then that's another thing we're testing for.
Okay. So that's the primary, or the initial training. What does training look like post completion? After
that, they train once a month. What they do right now is and they're going to continue this, is they'll train at a different facility and then the academy, and they rotate through that on a rotation. So they try to train at local facilities for a couple of reasons. One, it helps to make a scenario realistic, especially if somebody has an open unit we could use.
Yeah.
Because then you can actually train at a cell door, and you're seeing the things that might be roadblocks with a facility, as opposed to when we train here, all the doors open for us every time. We don't have to wait for anything to get through places.
Sure.
So being able to train in that environment is nice for realism and to explore those little roadblocks. The other reason is because CI is never going to be activated for an incident where SRT is not also there.
Yeah.
If somebody takes a hostage, SRT is coming too.
Right.
Because they're also needed. Yeah.
Naturally.
Unit takeover, anything like that. So the other reason is if staffing allows at that facility for that day, we try to work SRT in with us at those trainings and do a co-training with them, so we can both see how each other operate, familiarize both teams with each other, and then also it gives SRT a chance to practice what their role is going to be in that incident. You know, how to do deliveries, how to rescue people if need be, how to do all the stuff that they're going to be doing tactically in an incident. So it gives them a chance to practice that.
Okay. That makes sense. Um, So what are the expectations for call-outs? Because I know, like, I'm just thinking through the scope of, like, single parent or something like that, like, where you might not be able to go to a call-out or something like that, just because I imagine some people would be nervous about joining the team due to perceived expectations. So what are the actual expectations when it comes to that?
Well, before I go over what the on-paper expectations are, nobody on the team is heartless. Most of us do have families. We understand that situations happen.
Sure.
But the base expectation that you're told, and when you apply, it's in the form you're filling out. There's information in the email about it. You're signing up with the understanding that you could be called anytime, day or night, 24/7, unless you've communicated to leadership, hey, this week I'm going to Cancun or whatever you're doing.
Right.
Not available. Cool. We won't call you.
Yeah.
We won't bother you on your vacation. But if you don't tell someone that you're not available, you're going to get called if there's an incident, especially in your region. And the expectation is that you answer the call and you get your stuff ready and you head out.
Okay.
I was a semi-single parent while I was on CI. So I just had a plan that I made, which was, for me, I lived close to my mom.
Yeah.
So my mom just knew, hey, if I have my son on these days and I get a call, I have to go. I'll call you first, but are you okay with this? And I'll bring him over and I'll come get him when I'm done. And she was always understanding about that. So it's all just communication, make plans, plan for it, because it's not super useful to have a team of people who cannot respond to things.
Sure.
So if you're interested in it, it's workable. You just got to plan that out in your personal life for what do I do if I get this call and I'm by myself with my,
And I'm sure if you had specific concerns or something like that as an individual who was looking to apply or wanted to join the team, I'm sure that Karen or Jody or whoever would, kind of take the question.
Yes.
And try and help you navigate what that looks like for you moving forward. Like if I can't do it on these days or something like that, just communicate that and then they'll probably see if it's something that they can work around or not and then let you know. So that makes sense. Okay. Are there any common misconceptions about crisis intervention?
Yeah, there's quite a few movies and TV shows out there where there's hostage negotiation.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people think that hostage negotiators have like secret brain control like mind control techniques, or they have special words they say, or that there's a magic phrase that's going to solve problems. Because in the movies, some Hollywood actor is on the scene, he's talking to the guy for a while. All of a sudden, he brings up something that he leached from him in conversation, and it's, oh my God, you're right, I'll come out. Here's my wife and kids, I'm not holding them anymore.
The magic breakthrough word or something like that.
Yeah, and in real life, that's not the case.
Sure.
It's actually at the door or on the phone is the primary. Most of what you're doing is not talking.
Yep.
And the other it's mostly listening. You really can't just talk someone out of. If I've come to a point where mentally I feel like this is a good idea to take somebody hostage with a weapon,
yeah,
talking to me, like trying to talk me out of it, like I'm past that point mentally. I wouldn't have made this decision if I was still thinking rationally.
Right.
So that's one thing, and then the other piece is, the other one is, this is specific to corrections negotiations in Vermont. I mean, I'm not a negotiator, and I don't train negotiators in other states or agencies. But specific to us in Vermont, another misconception is that negotiators might like do rug pulls on people type of thing. So in the movies or TV shows, or just how people view what it is we're doing, it seems like it's all a trick.
Okay.
To some people from the outside. In Vermont corrections specifically, like an example of a trick would be like I tell you, oh yeah, I'll get you don't worry. If you come out, I'll give you plane tickets and we'll bring you to the airport.
Yeah.
And then you come out and we put you in handcuffs and we throw you in the back of a car and we take you somewhere. That doesn't happen in Vermont Corrections with this team. They're actually trained specifically to not lie.
Okay.
Sometimes people slip.
Naturally.
An example would be like the person asks me if I have kids, and I, out of professional habit, choose to say no because I don't want people knowing who my family is and all that stuff. And I just say no. The problem is with lying or trying to trick somebody in this team is that now I have to track that lie.
Yep.
And some of these incidents are long.
Yeah.
Yep. So now I have to make sure I don't slip up at any point because I want this person to trust me. And I want them to honestly trust me, not in a fake way. So if I say, no, I don't have kids, and then at hour 6, my brain is mush because I've been standing at this door for 6 hours, and he brings up, or she brings up their kids. And then I go, oh, yeah, I remember when my kid was, now they're, hey, wait a second.
You lost the previous 6 hours of conversation.
Yeah.
Or progress.
You lied to
Potentially.
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not going to trust anything you say from that point going forward.
Nope.
So that's one reason. The other reason is if it's a protracted incident, like a lot of people are familiar with Attica in New York. There's multiple days of hostage negotiations at that facility.
Yeah.
So multiple negotiators worked. I can't talk to somebody for 72 hours.
Right.
I'm going to need to sleep at some point.
Yeah.
So if we have to switch someone out, the next person now needs to be briefed. Hey, just so you know, Gillis said he does not have kids. And if they know I have kids, it's going to be hard for them to track that lie too, especially since they're not the one who told it. So they're not as cognizant of the fact that I lied about that.
Yeah, sure.
So it creates issues with trust and issues with team dynamics. Now everyone has to lie to cover your lie. But the other reason is because we work in the community, maybe I arrest you and then I don't see you again for years. Maybe I don't ever have to run into you again at all in a professional capacity. In corrections, I'm going to see these people every day that I work.
Right.
And there's a chance if you took a hostage or were part of a unit takeover once that you could do it again. And I might have to be the person talking to you.
Yeah.
If I tricked you last time and then I show up to your, like I said, yeah, we'll make sure you get Gatorade. And then when you go to get Gatorade, something squirrely happens.
Yep.
Next time I go to talk to you, you're not going to listen to me or anyone else from that team. Because last time you guys tricked me.
Yeah.
And then the last piece is Vermont Corrections is small.
Mm-hmm.
So if you trick one and then we transfer them or whatever happens to them after that, when they start telling their story in the units of what they did and what happened, everyone's going to know. If the negotiators are talking to you, don't trust them because they're going to trick you.
Right.
So we stay away from that completely. They're taught, don't lie. Sometimes people slip, but don't lie because it makes things complicated, and we're not here to trick people. Which
I think you're playing the long game, even though it's in the grand scheme of things, the strategy is, grand scheme of things, short term. Like, we have to solve this problem. We have a crisis.
Yeah.
We're negotiating. We need to get through this. Everybody's safe. But at what cost? And so understanding that there are long-term ramifications for the team and or department and or whatever, I think is valuable in the training aspect and the principles of the entire team dynamic, for sure. So that makes sense. Is there so if someone was interested in joining crisis intervention, is there anything they can really do to sort of prepare themselves better for getting through the initial training, but even after that, just being a good negotiator, essentially? Yeah, I mean, if you make it through the training, nothing's guaranteed, because if you decide to get, I don't know a better word for this, if you decide to get lazy after the training and you stop showing up to trainings or something, that's going to be an issue on its own. Sure. But if you keep up with the process and you show up to trainings and you do everything you're supposed to do, when you leave the basic,
you're only going to get better, and you're going to, in theory, you should already be a pretty decent negotiator by the end of that 10 days, which sounds kind of crazy to go from not negotiating at all to 10 days later being a pretty good negotiator.
Right.
But that's the hope at the basic. As far as preparing for the basic, I kind of gave broad brush strokes of it. It's 10 days. A lot of people get cut or self-select out because it's a very tough training. And people listening, if you're working for the department, you don't have to take my word for it. Go talk to people at your facility who are on the team or who've tried, and they won't give you secrets, but they're going to tell you, like, it's no joke. That training is tough.
Yeah, I've heard.
But it's hard to prepare for all of it because a big thing that we're trying to see besides teamwork and active listening and communication and receiving feedback and implementing it is, how do you handle stress? How do you handle wide arrays of stress types? So anything from being yelled at, and we're not yelling at you in the classroom. Class time is class time. But when there's a scenario, they turn it up and they act realistically based off real incidents we've seen or incidents other states have had.
Sure.
So can you get yelled at by someone in a pretty aggressive way without getting upset, without losing your composure? Can you still communicate with that person effectively when they're doing that?
Right.
And then it could be something, it sounds silly, but like for me, I could be yelled at all day and I'm fine. But I have difficulty with crying. Not with me crying, like talking to someone who's crying. Yeah. So there's different character types that the role players will play that deliver different kinds of stress. Yes. Some people are suicidal. How do you can you handle talking to someone who's threatening suicide?
Right. It's kind of like a trigger warning here. Like
what? Up front, we can't afford for that team to be like, okay, well, we can't touch these buttons, because the truth is, that people who take hostages are extremely upset, and they're not filtering their words. Right. So you're going to hear horrible things come out of their mouth, and you have to be able to work through that, no matter what you think of it. Right. So there's all kinds of stress we add in with that, and then other factors like you really don't know what's coming up in the training or what you're doing or when you're doing it. It's kind of thrown at you. It seems at random. It's all planned, but you don't know the plan, and it seems very chaotic. So for preparation, it's hard to prepare for that stuff. But the thing that people can definitely do is work on their active listening skills. And you can do that. If you work for the department, you could do that every day at work for free. Right. And, and sure. Nobody's going to fault you for it. Nobody's going to be like, hey, you're spending too much time actively listening to people. That's not going to happen.
As long as you're getting your checks done.
Yeah, get your checks done, your tours. Yeah. But when we say active listening, what we mean is most people, and they might be embarrassed to admit it, but most people, when they're listening to another person talk, are really just thinking about the next thing they're going to say the whole time. Yeah. So they're kind of like halfway listening, like this conversation's about football. But I'm not really listening to what he's saying. I just know we're talking about football, and I'm going to wait. When he's done, I'm going to tell him about Tom Brady's records or whatever. Yeah. That is not active listening. Right. That's listening to respond as opposed to active listening. So listening to absorb, process, and then communicate back something based on how that conversation's navigating. Right. So when you're at a door or on the phone, it sounds corny, but you have to think you're not there because things are good. You're there. Somebody's life is in danger. Somebody's, whether it's a staff member, another II, or that II you're talking to, or multiple if it's a unit takeover type of situation. Somebody's life is potentially on the line. So how I look at those conversations is whoever I'm talking to negotiate with, they are at that moment the most important person in the whole world, and everything they say matters 100% to me. Sure. That's like the mindset I get into, and I'm listening to everything, no matter how vulgar, no matter how obscene, no matter how ridiculous or nonsensical it might seem. I'm taking it in, and I'm processing it, and I'm only processing what they're giving me. I'm not trying to think of, oh, you know what, this line will be good. here. Like, I'm not
Right.
doing that. So you can do that at work every day.
Yeah.
When IIs come up and they are telling you a story, or they're telling you about their home life, or they're telling you about something, as long as it doesn't interfere with your job duties, instead of like not really listening and just trying, like, hoping that the conversation ends because it's not interesting to you, focus on it, take it in, and practice remembering all the stuff that they said.
Right.
Because that's a big key. Hour 8, what they said in the first 5 minutes might become relevant again, but they might not repeat it. You
Right.
need to know, oh, now it's making, what they're saying now connects with what they said
Yep.
then.
Yeah.
And now I can help work towards a solution with that.
Absolutely. That makes sense. That, and by practicing the active listening in a unit, you may be in and of itself preventing
Yeah.
a CI call out in the future for that day, right? Especially if you got one II that's having a bad day. Take that opportunity as a learning opportunity, but you might have solved the problem before it became a problem. I like that. Awesome. I think we're about to wrap up. Is there anything additional that you think would be worth making sure everybody was aware in regards to CI?
Just that, for one, like I said, there's a basic coming up in October. The recruitment email should come out late May, early June, and then interviews will be completed by July with invites by the end of July, August 1st timeline. The team is at a decent size right now, so it's not going to be, the way we recruit for that team, from like my perspective, is, and from, administratively speaking,
Yeah.
there's no minimum number that comes out
Yep.
that we're looking for at the end of that 10 days. If we get one person who makes it, then we have one more person.
Yeah.
Because of the importance, like I said, of they need to be up to speed. So when we need a lot of people, we make a wide funnel at the top because we know the bottom of that funnel is going to be narrow. Right now, it's going to be pretty competitive, I think, because the team is of decent size. So we're not looking to hope to get necessarily a ton of people at the end of the funnel.
Right.
If we do, cool, but that's not like the goal.
Right.
So it will be competitive. So make sure you're doing good at work, as you always should be. But make sure you're doing good at work. You're showing up. You're not late or unprofessional or not a good team player, because that stuff's all going to play a role. And the last piece is, as difficult as the basic is, and I really can't do it justice by just talking about it. It's really something you have to experience.
Sure.
That shouldn't turn anybody off from that basic. For one, some people had to go through the basic twice before they made it on the team.
Right.
Because the first time they have the baseline stuff that is needed for the team, but they just couldn't absorb the information in that time frame.
Yeah.
But now when they go through it again, they already have some of it, and it's a little easier. So once, it's not like if you don't make it, you'll never be on again.
Sure.
That's not the case. The other thing is, I've never met someone so far, or at least they haven't told me, who didn't make it and regretted going to the training.
Yeah, I was going to kind of get into that. Like, it's probably a really unique experience, even if you don't get on the team.
Yeah.
I don't imagine you'll be able to experience that in a lot of different other situations ever, right? So, yeah, just the fact that it's a unique experience in and of itself, and you're going to get skills from it. If you're paying attention at all, you should get something out of it, even if you don't get on the team.
Yeah, you'll get, as long as you don't come in at day one and start just doing crazy unprofessional stuff in the first 5 minutes and we cut you loose then.
Sure.
If you make it even through one day, you've gained some skills or enhanced some skills in that one day.
Absolutely.
Which sounds crazy, but it's 10 days. So you can imagine the cramming that goes on during each day.
Yep.
So everyone, I think, leaves feeling like they benefited from it. Personally, at the end of the 10 days, I felt like a Zen monk. Sometimes I think it would be good for me mentally to go through it again, like once a year.
Yeah.
Because it's like a refresher, like for my brain.
Yeah.
Because I left there and there was no family stuff, personal stuff that could stress me out for like a good 6 months after that.
Yeah.
Because I was just like,
kind of tuned into.
I was just calm. Like nothing was going to be, I don't know. Nothing was going to be worse stress-wise than what I had just done.
Yeah.
And I knew I made it through that. So whatever was thrown my way after that was.
Well, that, and you essentially, not that it's necessarily problem solving, but it kind of is. So like you just went through a crash course in problem solving in addition to the other things that you work on. So like you're getting additional stress thrown at you from different directions following that potentially, and you're just like, oh yeah, that's not a big deal. You're like kind of fine-tuned on processing the information and active listening and all of these things, so it just better suits you for the response. Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's one last thing for me, unless you had another question, but yeah, you brought it up and it reminded me, was you said problem solving, which is one of the other misconceptions. We see this a lot in the basic, especially, well, everybody in the basic is correctional staff of some kind, but in corrections, we're kind of like built and trained and ingrained to solve problems and solve them right now.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a fight in your unit. That's a problem that needs to be solved this instant. There's no waiting. There's no talking. Like it needs to be solved. Or there's a fire or a medical emergency or whatever the situation is. So a lot of staff have a problem-solving perspective towards every problem.
Sure.
Which isn't a bad thing in our day-to-day work. But in negotiations, you have to think, put yourself in the shoes of someone who just took a hostage. They're probably feeling a lot of things at the moment, and none of them are logical. So they just aren't, because it's not a logical thing to do.
Right.
So if I'm way up here with anger or whatever feeling I'm feeling that led me to think, this is a good idea right now.
Yep.
I'm obviously way up here. I'm way off the scale on anger or whatever the emotion is. One thing we see a lot of in the beginning of the first week is staff will come in with that problem-solving attitude.
Yeah.
And so if I'm on the other side of the door, I'm yelling all kinds of stuff, but that we don't need to say on air or whatever. But
please don't.
But I'm screaming that I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to this person, and that I want a helicopter and $1 million. And they, instead of just listening and trying to like listen for the little grains that are in that conversation, they jump right to, look, man, how about you want to just come out? Like, what can we do? And they try to go to that. I'm not there.
Right.
I'm up here. I need to come down first before I'm willing to start working on. And that's not just me as a role player. That's like the reality of negotiations.
Because even in the reality of that situation, you could give them the most ideal resolution, logical explanation of any of it, and they just can't meet you in that space. Yeah, because they're not ready.
They need to come down. They need to trust you, but mostly they need to. That level of anger, you can only stay that angry for so long. That needs to come down.
Yeah. So, but the other team members, what are they kind of doing in that time frame? Collecting information, relaying information, things of that nature.
Yeah. So Intel is doing Intel work, like I said. So they're looking into if I'm an II and I take a hostage in a facility, they're going to be looking into me, my background, what's going on with me right now. They'll be looking. They'll be talking to my caseworker probably, like, hey, what's going on with him lately?
Which I'm sure that's also not easy. Like, obviously, the crisis intervention, you're talking about the primary being the person that's talking to the person in crisis. Yeah. Sure. But the rest of the team is probably doing very transferable things as far as, like, intense, looking into backgrounds, gathering all that information. I'm sure it's a heavy workload even for the entire team in that process.
Yeah, nobody has an easy job in that incident. Intel is rushing to get as much stuff as they can. There's some stuff I can't say what some of it is, but that is like considered baseline information they need to gather, and they need that as quick as possible in case it pops up right away that they'll need it. The runner is obviously physically working pretty hard, going back and forth, but also they need to. You'll see, if you ever see pictures of a CI training or a real incident, there's sticky notes all over the place. Which sounds a little ridiculous, but it's one of the better ways to actually be able to organize notes that need to be
Yeah.
handed
Move it
out.
to different sections potentially, and
Yeah.
and,
So like this, I'm the secondary, you're my primary. This section of sticky notes is for you. Nobody's allowed to touch it. And
Yeah.
then this section is stuff I need the runner to take
Yeah.
to whoever.
Yeah.
That runner needs to not only get that stuff back and forth as quick as possible and manage their time between the 3 stations, but they also need to know what that note means. So maybe this person was ranting and raving about something and there was a nugget in there that I knew needed to be heard, and I just shorthanded it real quick because
Yeah.
I know my own shorthand, and I stuck it on the wall and I didn't think about it again because then something else happened inside the room.
Right.
If the secondary just grabs that and runs off and then brings it to the knock leader or the command,
Who probably can't read your handwriting anyway.
yeah,
You're
and
scratching off.
and he doesn't even know what I meant by it, or she doesn't
Sure.
even know what I meant by it. And then command or the knock leader goes, "What does this mean?" And you can't explain it. That's going to be stressful for you because now you're going to have to. It sounds dumb, but in the middle of that incident, all those little things are very, very tough. So then you're going to have to run all the way back, and now you've wasted this time on this thing that was imminent and needed to be relayed right away. So you got to be on top of your game. The team leader's organizing everyone and kind of like organizing the flow of ideas inside the knock and what to work on for objectives
Sure.
and all that stuff. Because there's things that they'll work towards at different phases depending on what command wants and what the team thinks they can work towards and all that.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely a system that I'm sure over time has become more refined and just like this works, even if it is sticky notes on a wall. If
Yeah.
it works, it works. And it's more about efficiency and communication to get things done. So, awesome. That's all I've got. Thank you for participating and informing us of all the things that are CI. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.